Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's option watch list. Hopefully, you all had a wonderful weekend and are looking forward to getting back to trading here. So, before I get into the actual plays I'm looking at, gonna do a quick overview of the indices and what we could potentially see this week with them. So, let's start off here with the ES futures. We can zoom in a little bit here. Loving that we have this new low compression daily squeeze setting up, price reclaiming this 21 EMA and holding this 8 EMA on the daily. We have our stacked EMAs once again. We've reclaimed those as well, and I think that this squeeze will eventually start to fire to that upside, giving us new all-time highs, if not this week, potentially next week, giving us that Santa Claus rally into the end of the year. So the ES to me is looking very good, and I think that, as I said before, all-time highs should be here shortly. Now moving on to the Qs, very similar story here to the ES. Nice daily squeeze with normal compression on it. Broke up above the 21 EMA and are holding it very nicely here. Basically came down and touched it and bounced directly off of that level, which is exactly what I wanted to see. We also have stacked DMAs on this one, so just like the ES, I think that this squeeze will eventually start to fire to that upside, giving Qs and tech new all-time highs here as well. Now moving on to the YM. The YM, its structure is looking good here. We're getting on closes above the 21 EMA. We have our stacked EMAs. We don't have any squeeze setting up, but if we do start consolidating between this +1 ATR and this 21 EMA, one could potentially form here. But if we do look at the weekly time frame here, we do have a weekly squeeze that is looking to fire to that upside, and if this weekly squeeze does fire, we could see a few months here of strength on the YM. So definitely keep your eye out on this squeeze on the weekly time frame to see if that starts to fire to the upside. And with its structure here, trading above the 21 EMA, our stacked EMAs, it is looking to fire to that upside. Alright, last indice here on the list is the Russell. So the Russell compared to the other indices does look the weakest here. We got a false breakout here, pushing up to these +3 ATR levels and then falling right back down into this previous ranged location. If I turn on these, we can see areas of support and resistance that we should be watching and keeping our eyes on within the Russell, hoping that we hold this previous support and do not break below that. If we do, we could see these lower lows here on the Russell. Would ideally want to see a breakout of this top resistance for any continuation on the Russell itself here. So definitely keep your eyes on these levels here in the following weeks to come. Another thing to keep an eye on within the Russell is that we do have this weekly squeeze. Its histogram is above the 0 line, but we aren't closing above the 21 EMA, and we don't have stacked EMAs, which means that its structure isn't entirely bullish. But I still think that if we stay within that range and don't break below it, we could see this weekly squeeze eventually turn around and maybe fire to the upside if the other indices can also maybe push some of these smaller caps up. So definitely keep your eyes on that weekly squeeze. Now going into the actual plays that I'm looking at for this week, have some good ones that are setting up, especially with the Q setting up as well. A few of them are with tech, and the first one I'm going to be looking at here is Google. Google's looking really good. It's been having a very good year here, basically a straight uptrend, which is what we like to see in the stocks we like to trade to the upside. Have this nice low compression squeeze here, gaining that bullish momentum with these yellow bars, trading above that 21 EMA with stacked EMAs as well. And another reason I like Google is because it does have multiple squeezes on multiple time frames. So if we come to a 3-day, we can see that this squeeze is looking to fire to that upside here. And then we also have a weekly squeeze that is forming as well. So all of these squeezes are just leading me to believe that Google is setting up to make a nice large move here on the market. And once we have one on these lower time frames, like on the daily, and that fire to the upside, that should then get the 3 day to fire to the upside, and then that weekly as well, creating that domino effect, just giving Google a lot of strength. So this is the one that I'm probably going to be looking at closest this week is Google. Ideally want an entry near this 21 EMA, but will also take one at this 8 EMA as well, due to it looking so solid with the rest of the market, or the Qs themselves, which also look to be firing to that upside. Next one I'm looking at here is Microsoft, another tech one here. Uh, did get a good strong push here on Friday, so ideally I'm going to wait for a pullback on this one due to it not being in an ideal buy zone. Anything above that +1 ATR is not a good area for me to enter, and it looks to be pushing basically up to these +2 ATRs, which is an even worse buy zone. So this squeeze, I think, still has some room to develop, so I think you could get a pullback to this 8 EMA eventually, which then would be a much better place to get an entry on Microsoft. But overall, tech, as I said before, looks very strong. So Microsoft being one within that, also having some good strength here on Friday, is looking to continue to that upside. As I said before, just look for an entry near the 8 EMA at least, which is a much better place than at the levels it is at now. Next one I'm looking at here is Roblox. So Roblox had this great push, and then it's starting to consolidate here near this 21 EMA, has been holding it very nicely. We are forming a daily squeeze with price trading, or the histogram above the 0 line. Ideally want to see that hold here and this 21 EMA hold. Do like that we have our stacked DMAs, and price has been respecting the 21 EMA as of now, but would ideally like to see some lighter blue bars on this histogram and not have it fall below that 0 line. So just keep an eye on that early in the week on Roblox to see if it can hold those key levels and potentially bounce off of those. Next one I'm looking at has been on my watch list, I believe it was last week as well. We have a great uptrend here on Thermo Fisher, and we are forming a nice high compression daily squeeze, which is leading me to believe that when it does break out of that squeeze, it'll make a very large move due to its high compression here sitting in this range. So I like this one because first off, we are getting this first yellow bar on the histogram showing that momentum could potentially shift. We have our stacked EMAs, and our price is trading above that 21 EMA. Ideally with this one as well, look for an entry near a pullback to this 8 EMA, or even better, this 21. But I think that with this daily squeeze, we could get that push back up here to previous all-time highs. So definitely keep your eye out on Thermo Fisher for the upcoming week. Alright, last but not least here, we have Texas Instruments. I like this one a lot, kind of the same way for Google, not because it's in tech, but because of the multiple squeezes it has on its different time frames. So the first one here being that daily, our histogram is above that 0, we're holding above the 21 EMA, and we have stacked DMAs. And then moving on to the 3-day chart, we can see that we're getting some nice bullish momentum coming back into it. Ideally want to see some light blue bars, but everything about its structure does look solid, holding that 21 EMA here these last 3 days, and we have stacked EMAs as well. And then if we come all the way to the weekly time frame, this one also looks solid as well. Has been consolidating here basically between +1 ATR and close to that -1 ATR here. We're getting some bullish momentum here on the histogram, holding above that 0 line. Price is holding above the 21 and stacked DMA. So just like with Google, as I was saying, if we can get this daily squeeze to fire, that should then fire the 3-day, which then should fire the weekly, giving Texas Instruments a lot of strength into the end of the year and probably even further into January. So definitely keep your eyes on this daily squeeze if it can fire to the upside, leading to those other ones to have the domino effect. So this is the weekly watch list. Hopefully it gives you all a few other stocks to add to yours and key things that you can be looking at this week on the market. Have a great trading week, everyone.